Hey guys, if you're interested in machine learning, Eduonix has a really interesting course coming out that focuses on building real-world projects, including a stock market clustering project, credit card fraud detection, some health-based detection projects, and more. If you're interested in backing this course, check out the Kickstarter link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're going to be building a payment application with PHP and the Stripe API. Now, I did a Node.js and Stripe API video where we used the pre-made form that Stripe offers, and we were able to make a payment, charge a customer, and have all that happen in the Stripe dashboard. But this is going to be more in depth. We're actually going to create a custom form and not only charge a customer and store it in Stripe, but also implement our own backend with PHP and MySQL. So we're going to create a customers and a transactions table to store the info that we get back from the API. And we're also going to create some pages where we can see that data within our application. Now, this isn't a beginner tutorial. I'm expecting that you do know some PHP. If you don't, I'd suggest my PHP front to back course on YouTube. And if you want to go further than that, my course on Udemy, which I'll put a link in the description for. We're actually going to be using PDO to interact with our MySQL database. And we're actually going to use the same PDO class that we used in the Udemy course. Now, we're going to be focusing on object-oriented programming with classes for our models and so on to store our data and to fetch our data. So it's going to be a decent sized project. The only thing that I'm not going to do just yet, unless the series really gains some traction, is authentication, okay, to see the transactions and so on. But of course, you guys can add that on your own as well. You could even make a pull request to the Git repository if you want. All right, and I'm guessing this will be a couple videos, but we'll see. All right, so let's do a quick demo. This is the landing page. It's a pay page for a product. I'm just saying that it's for an Intro to React course for $50. So you would put your name in here, and we're going to make it so that you could put whatever fields you want. I'm just having a first, last name, and email address, and then the credit card number. All right, so we'll do first and last name and email, and then the card number. Now, with the Stripe API, they give you a credit card number that you can use as a test, which is just 42 all the way down. So just all 4 2s. It can be any expiration date. We'll say 4/22. The code can be anything. Zip can be anything. And that should actually work. If we have something that isn't correct, it'll tell us that it's not correct. And this is going to be coming from the charge.js file, okay? We will be doing a little bit of JavaScript, but we're going to mostly get that from the documentation. All right, so this should be valid, so we'll submit our payment. And then what's going to happen is it's going to charge. It's going to show up in our Stripe dashboard. It's going to get added to our database, and then it's going to redirect us to this success page where it'll say, thank you for purchasing whatever the product is, give us our transaction ID, and tell us to check our email for more info. And Stripe actually sends like an invoice to your email showing you that you paid for it. And then we can just go back to the form. All right, now if I go to... And by the way, I'm using XAMPP as my environment here, but if I go to transactions.php, we'll see that transaction with the ID, the customer ID, the product, the amount, and the date. We can also go to customers.php and we'll see that customer. All right, and if we go back to the pay page and do one more, let's say Tom Smith. Again, we're going to use the test number. And submit. Okay, so now if we go to transactions, and I don't have a link to it from here because you wouldn't do that. This is kind of like a back-end page. And now you can see we have that transaction as well with the new customer ID. All right, and if we go to our back end of our Stripe dashboard, if I reload, we see those 2 payments that went through. And if I go down to customers, we're going to see those 2 customers, Brad and Tom. All right, and it gives us the card. It's not going to give us the actual card number. It'll give us the last 4 digits and the expiration. The way that the Stripe API works is it uses a token. It doesn't actually give you the card number. It uses a token to charge the card. Okay, and if you look in our PHP MyAdmin, database, you can see in customers, it stored the customers. We're using the customer ID that came back from Stripe as our primary key. Same thing with the transaction, we have the transaction ID. All right, I'm trying to think of anything else. This is the PDO class we'll be using. It's in a gist file. I'll go over it a little bit, but we'll probably just paste that into a library folder. And if you did watch my Udemy PHP course, then you're probably going to be familiar with that. All right, so that's what we're building, guys. Like I said, it'll probably take a couple videos. There's quite a bit of code to do, as you can see over here. We have our models, we have our customer model, our transaction model. We have our PDO library. That's the file I just showed you in the gist. We're going to be using the Stripe API to do our charges, charge the customer, create the customer, and so on. And then we have our JavaScript file, which is going to basically take care of the validation of the credit card and also putting the form element on the page. Okay, this right here. Where is it? This here. So this whole thing is powered by the charge.js file. All right, so that's what we'll be building, guys, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so if you guys are going to be following along, then you need to go to one of the documentation pages, which is stripe.com docs stripe.js elements/quickstart. And this is going to give us some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to basically create this here. Okay, so it's just the simple credit card number form, and it includes all the validation and stuff. If we put something that's not correct, it'll give us the error message. These three files combined will basically give us something like this. Now, as you saw in our application, we're going to add a first name, last name, email, all that stuff. So we're going to be customizing it quite a bit. We're going to be using Bootstrap. So we're going to customize it, but I just want to get this down first. All right, and this alone isn't going to actually charge anything. It's basically just to give you the form and to validate the card. It's not going to, if you submit it, it's not going to actually do anything except for give you a token, where then your server side would take over, and then you would use the Stripe SDK, in our case with PHP, to charge the card. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our server. I'm in my htdocs folder in my XAMPP. If you're using WAMP or Laragon or something like that, or just a regular LAMP stack, that's fine. Just go into your server folder. Okay, and then we're going to create a folder called PayPage, and I'm going to open that up with VS Code. All right, so from here we want to create our index. Now in this case we're not going to have an HTML page, it's going to be a PHP page. So we're going to say index.php, and then for the CSS and JavaScript I'm going to put those into their own folders. So we'll have CSS and JS. CSS, let's say new file style.css, and then for the JS, new file, and we'll say charge.js. Okay, so we'll start off with our HTML, which will go into our index PHP. So I'm going to add in just some basic head body tags here with Emmet. We'll change the title to pay page, and let's link our style sheet. Oops. So that's in the CSS folder, style.css. And then what I'll do is just grab this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we're going to add to this, but let's grab the form, so the beginning form tag to the ending form tag, and let's stick that in there. And then let's grab this script to the Stripe version 3 JavaScript file, and let's put that down here right above the ending body tag. And we'll tab this over. Alright, so we'll save that, and then if we click on the CSS tab, there's some styling we want. So we're going to grab this for all the Stripe element stuff, paste that in our style sheet, and save. And then we're going to go to the JavaScript and grab all of this stuff and copy that and put that in the charge.js. And then one thing we're missing here is it's calling a Stripe token handler function. That's actually down here. So if you scroll down, let's see, where is it? It's right here. So this, the Stripe token handler, we're just going to grab that and put that at the very bottom. All right, so what this is doing is basically it's going to initialize Stripe with our client-side key. Now, if you're logged in looking at this documentation, your key is already going to be put in here. This is my key, and if I go to my dashboard and I go to API, you'll see my publishable key, which is right here. It's the same thing. Okay, so it's XW right here. All right, if you're not logged in, you won't see it in the documentation, and you'll have to log in and grab it and stick it in there. Okay, make sure you use your own, don't use mine. And then we're going to just create an instance of elements, some custom styling here that can be passed as an option. You can see that's being passed right here into this elements.create. And then we're going to mount to an ID of card element, and that's basically going to put that right in here. See this ID of card element? That's where that field is going to be put, and it's just going to be the credit card field, nothing else. We're going to add the other stuff in a little bit, and then it's going to handle all the validation. So if the card isn't valid or something like that, it'll handle it. It'll handle the form submission, and then it'll call Stripe token handler, which will send the token to your server, and that function is right here. It'll finally submit the form. All right, so if I go ahead and save this, make sure all these files are saved, and we go to our local host pay page. Let me just, let's see, why is that not showing up? That's because we didn't include the charge.js file. So we want to make sure we go down here and let's add that. Oops. So it's going to be charge.js. Actually, it's in the JavaScript folder, so let's do that. All right, so we'll save, and there we go. So now we basically have just the credit card field, and it will work. If we put something in here that's not valid, it'll actually check. If we put our valid number, that'll work. If I submit it, it's gonna get submitted to charge, because that's where the form is actually submitting to. Okay, up to this point, we basically just have our front end. We now need to build our server side, which is going to handle the rest. Now, we don't want this to go to just charge. We want this to go to charge.php, which is going to be a file that we're going to create. All right, so I'm actually going to put ./charge.php. So above this, actually, let's bring in Bootstrap. So I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com. Hopefully you're with me so far. And we're going to grab the link to the style sheet and paste that in. Now, once I do that, if I go back to our page, you'll see that it messes up. And that's because we need to add that Bootstrap form control class. So right on the card element, this ID card element, we're also going to add a class of form control. Okay, so now we get the form back. And we're going to add a bunch of other things. We're going to wrap everything inside of a container class. So let's take this div and we're going to wrap everything, the whole form. So right here, we'll have that ending div, just to put everything into a container. Okay, so that pushes it into the middle. Let's see, what else are we going to do? I don't want the label, this label right here. I'm going to get rid of that. And the button, I want to format that as Bootstrap. Now the button isn't, you can clearly see it's not in the HTML, it's generated in JavaScript. So we're going to have to do a little bit of DOM manipulation through our JavaScript. So what I'll do is go right under this style, and we're just going to, let's say, style button with Bootstrap. So we'll say document dot get, not get, we'll do query selector, and it's inside the payment form. It has an ID of payment dash form. If we look at the HTML here, if we open up our Chrome tools, and let's see, right here, so the form has an ID of payment form, and we want the button that's inside of that, which is right here, this button. So we need to add a class to that, or a couple classes. So we'll say payment form button, and then we're going to do dot class list, and this is pretty much the only JavaScript we're going to be doing, guys. It's going to be mostly PHP after this. We want to add btn dash primary, btn dash block, and let's do a margin top 4. All right, so if we save that and reload, let's see, class list is not a function. What did I do here? Query selector. Oh, I'm a dummy. Class list equals that. It's not a function. It's a property. There we go. So now we have our nice button. So now what we'll do is add the rest of the fields. So we're going to go back to index.php, and right above the form, I'm just going to put an h2 with the class of, let's say, my-4. That'll give us margin on the top and bottom. And then let's also do a text center class, and we'll just say the name of the product, which is intro to React course, and we'll put the price of $50. All right, so if we were to look at that, there we go. Now for the rest of the fields, we're going to go into our form, into the form row div right here, and let's add an input, and I'm going to give it a class of form control. Okay, we're also going to give it a class of MB3, margin bottom 3, to move everything down. We're also going to give it that stripe element class to kind of match the credit input. So stripe element, and then we also want to do stripe element dash dash empty, like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to put a placeholder. So placeholder will be first name. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so there's our first name field. Now we want to do the same thing for the other two fields, so I'm going to copy this down two times, and this second one is going to be the last name. So we'll say last name for the placeholder. Whoops. And let's see. Oh, you know what I forgot is the name attribute. We definitely need those because that's how we retrieve the data in the back end. So let's say name first underscore name, and then the last name will be last underscore name. And let's see, the final field here, we're going to give a name of email. Let's also make it a type of email, and we'll change the placeholder to email, or email address. So let's take a look at that, and there we go. So there's our form. One thing I forgot is the Stripe API. It does need jQuery, I believe, so we're going to grab the jQuery CDN. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. I'm just using the one from Google APIs, jQuery 321. And then we should be all set for our form. Now it's telling us that we can test our Stripe integration over HTTP, which is what we're doing. Obviously, if you were to deploy this to a remote host, you would need an SSL certificate. You'd want HTTPS. Okay, so it's just telling us that. It's also giving us this message saying that the use of the line height property is discouraged, which I find weird because they actually included it in this style right here. So I guess if we get rid of this, that'll make that warning go away. But I think that's weird that they gives us that warning, yet they give us that in the documentation. But whatever, it's fine. So that's going to do it for the form and basically the entire front end. So now when we submit this, it should go to a file called charge.php because that's what we put as the action. So let's go ahead and create that in our root here. So we'll say charge.php and let's put in a PHP tag, and all I'm going to do is echo submitted just to make sure that this actually works. Alright, so let's put in a name. Card number. So if we put something that isn't right, it's going to tell us. Let's put in the correct one and submit. And there we go. So we know it's submitting to charge.php. So this is where we want to start to use the Stripe SDK and make our charge. So I'm going to go to the GitHub page for, let's see, Stripe-PHP is what it's called. And we're going to use Composer to install it. Very simple. We just need to install it with this command, and then we just need to require it in our script with this. Alright, so if you don't have Composer, if you're on Windows, you can go to not get Bootstrap. You want to go to getcomposer.org and just download it and install it. Okay, it's a GUI installer. It's really easy. And then once you have that installed, you'll be able to use the Composer command. If you're on Mac, you might want to use Homebrew to install it. If you're on Linux, you can use whatever package manager. Okay, I already have it installed, so I'm not going to go through that. But what we want to do is this. So I'm going to open up my terminal, my VS Code integrated terminal here, and we're going to run this command. So it's going to be composer require, and what is it? So stripe.php, was it .php? -php. Alright, -php. So we're going to run that. And what that'll do is create a composer.json file right here, as you can see. Okay, and it should create, yep, and it creates a vendor folder. And now that's installed. So what we want to do now is require it. So we would just want to add this line right here to our charge.php. So I'm going to just add that there. And now we can use the Stripe SDK for PHP. Now let's see if this shows any documentation. Yeah, so we want to include our server-side key now, okay, because now we're on our server. So we basically want this here. So we'll put that in, and I'll put links to the GitHub page and all the stuff that we're going to look at within this project. But from here, you want to replace this with your server key. So you want to go to your dashboard, API, and then reveal the test key token. And we want to grab that. Okay, and we'll put that in here. And then you have your server key. So now what we want to do is we want to get the form data that's being submitted. So to do that, if you have any experience with PHP, you probably know that you can get it with the post array because we're submitting it as a post request. So for instance, to get our first name field, we can do post first name because that's what we gave it as a name attribute. So we want all that stuff, and we want the token, which we can get with post stripe token. Now, just to be safe, I want to filter the entire post array. I want to sanitize it so that if people put something that's harmful, it'll sanitize it as a string. So let's go ahead and do that. Say sanitize post array. So I'm going to create a new variable called just money sign post, and then set that to the PHP filter underscore var underscore array function, and then we just want to pass in money sign underscore post, saying we want to filter that and we want to sanitize it with filter underscore sanitize underscore string. I spell that right? Yeah, so sanitize string. And then what we'll do is create our variables like first name, and then set it to post. And you want to use just money sign post, not underscore, because we set this to the filtered post array. So now we want to set that to, to post first name. All right, and then we're going to just copy that down 3 more times. Let's do the last name. And let's do email. Whoops. And we want the Stripe token, which is the most important thing here. So we'll call this just token. All right, so that should get all of the form values. Now, if we want to test this out, we could, let's just echo out the token. All right, so we'll go back to our form and let's resubmit. And there we go. So now we're getting a token. That means that the credit card we put in was valid. Of course, it was just the test credit card, but if we were in production mode and we put in a real credit card that worked, then we would get a token like this. All right, so now that we have the token, we want to create a customer. And when I say create a customer, I mean within Stripe, not within our database. Or we're not doing our database until after we're able to actually make a charge. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's say create customer in Stripe. So we're going to create a variable called customer. We're going to set it to backslash Stripe backslash customer double colon create, and then we want to pass in an array. And inside this array, we just want to put email, and we can get this from the email variable because we have that set right here to whatever was sent in with the form. In addition to that, we need to assign the source, which is going to be the token. Okay, so just like that, that'll create the customer, but now we need to charge the customer. Okay, so to do that, we're going to create a variable called charge. We're going to set that equal to backslash Stripe backslash charge double colon create. And just like above, we're going to pass in an array, and we're going to put the amount. So the amount is going to be $50. Now with Stripe, we do it like this. We don't actually put the decimal point, but that's what it is. This is $50. Okay, and then the currency that we want to use, which is going to be USD. And let's do a description. This isn't required, but it's good because it'll show up in your back end. What did they actually buy? So I'm going to say intro to React course, and then finally the customer that bought it is going to be from that customer variable, and we want the ID. All right, so that should charge the customer. Now all I'm going to do after that's done is just go ahead and print R, which will print out an array of charge. Okay, because we're going to see what we get back from this charge variable once we charge the customer. So let's save this, and I'm going to go in my dashboard, and you see how I have some test stuff here, payments and customers. I want to get rid of that, and it's very easy to do that. You just go to business settings, data, and then delete test data. So we want to get rid of everything. So anytime you want to start from scratch, get rid of anything, you just do that. Now if I go to payments, there's nothing there. Okay, so we're ready to try it out. And this should actually charge and add the payment and the customer and all of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. So let's say John Doe. We'll say jdoe@gmail.com. Put in our card number and submit. Hopefully it works. Okay, so you can see that this is what it gave us back. But before we look at this, let's look at our dashboard. Let's reload. And there it is, our $50 charge for Intro to React. We have our ID, our customer email, the date, and then if I go down to customers, we should see jdoe@gmail with the customer ID. It also gives us the card, the brand, the last 4 digits, and the expiration date. Okay, so up to this point, we're able to actually charge a customer, and if that's all you wanted to do, that's fine, you could do that. But I want to take it a step further and add it to our database, so we actually have some local data for our charges, for our customers, and this is all the stuff that you get back. So this is the transaction ID, which we can get with we could get it from charge ID like that. So we could get any of these fields back. So the ID, the amount refunded, a lot of this stuff we're not going to use, but it is available. Balance transaction, the created at, the date, the currency, the customer ID, which we'll be using, the description, which is the product. Let's see what else. The risk level, which is normal, the seller message, payment complete, receipt email, so we can get the email back, the customer email. What else? We didn't do an address or anything like that. The zip code, we can get that. We can get the last 4. Where is it? Right here. So we can get the last 4 digits of the credit card if we want. The expiration date, the expiration month and year, status, which is succeeded. So we're going to use some of this stuff to insert it into our database after we charge the customer. But for now, what I want to do is just redirect to a success page, because obviously if they go through and they purchase the course, we don't want this to be displayed. So what we'll do here is do a redirect. We'll say redirect to success. So in PHP we use the header function, and in here we say location, and we want to go to success.php, which we'll create, and I want to add some parameters here. I want to add the transaction ID as well as the description of the product so that we can use that in the display message. So to put a parameter, we want to put a question mark, and then I'm going to use TID for transaction ID, and then we're just going to concatenate with a dot, and we're going to say charge ID. Alright, then we're going to concatenate again back to a string, and we're going to put another parameter, so we use an ampersand, and we'll say product equals, and then concatenate onto that charge, and then we get that from description. Okay, as you can see up here, where is it? Right here, description is going to be Intro to React course. So we want to pass those things along in the URL. So let's save it, and then let's create a success page. So success.php, and we're going to want some head body tags. Let's see, right here, the title, we'll just say thank you. And then I'm going to grab the Bootstrap link. We don't need like the style sheet here. We don't need these scripts or anything, because it's just a simple success page, but we do need Bootstrap. And then in the body, let's put a div with the class of container, and then let's just do MT margin top 4. Okay, and then in here we'll put an H2, and we'll say thank you for purchasing, and then I'm going to put a PHP variable in here. We're going to echo out product, and I'll create that variable in a second. And then under that we'll put an HR, and then let's put a paragraph, and we'll say your transaction ID is, and then we'll echo out a variable called TID. Okay, then we'll put another paragraph. We'll say check your email for more info, and then I'm just going to put another paragraph with a go back button or a go back link. So we'll do an A tag with a class of BTN light, and let's do margin top 2. Okay, and this is just going to go to index.php, which is our landing page, and we'll say go back. All right, now this will give us an error because it doesn't know what product and TID is. So what we want to do is go up to the top above the markup and put in our PHP tags. And when we want to get the parameters from the URL, because we're going to have it like TID equals something product, if we want to access those, we access them in the get array. Just like we have a post array when we submit a form with a post request, we can get variables. So we first need to check for those. Okay, so we're going to say if not empty, we want to put an exclamation here. If not empty, money sign underscore get, and we want to look for TID, and not empty product. Okay, so if both of those are not empty, then I want to filter the get array. So I'm going to say get equals, and again use filter var array, and we're going to pass in the get array, and we want to sanitize it as a string, or each value as a string. So filter underscore sanitize string. Okay, so now what I'll do is set the TID variable equal to money sign get TID, and then we're going to do the same thing with the product. All right, and then we will just want to do an else. If those two things aren't here, then we just want to redirect back to the index page. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. I forgot. What did I do here? This is wrong. This should be get product, like that. Right? Is that right? Yeah. All right. So it's just checking not empty get TID, not empty get product. If that's true, it's going to filter the get array, and then we're going to set these variables. Else, it's going to redirect. So if I were to just go to success.php, it's just going to redirect us. It needs those values. So let's try this again. We'll say Jack Bauer for you 24 fans, and let's do Jack at yahoo.com. Submit payment, and there we go. Thank you for purchasing the React course. Gives us the transaction ID. Good. And then if we go to our Stripe dashboard and reload, let's say customers, we should see Jack. And if we go to payments, we should see his payment. Awesome. So, I mean, you could stop here and just have it like this, but if you want your own backend, your own database with your own data, then let's go ahead and do that in the next video. Hey guys, so machine learning is really popular right now, and Eduonix is releasing a cutting-edge project-based course that focuses on things like clustering algorithms, linear regression analysis, fraud detection, and much more. It's a deep learning course with projects that will use real-world data, and it's a course for serious developers, but at the same time being fun and engaging. So to learn more, check out the Kickstarter link in the description below.